So what happens when a Roman emperor is murdered out on campaign? Well, usually it's total chaos. But what if the person who takes the throne is his killer? Well, that's the wild story of Macrinus, the emperor who never should have been.
Welcome, friends, to Voices of History. We're continuing our journey down the road to the decline of Rome, and today we are talking about a man who was never, ever supposed to wear the imperial purple.
Okay, so picture this. It's 217 AD. The Emperor Caracalla, who was a real piece of work, gets assassinated. The man who steps up to replace him? His own Praetorian prefect, a guy named Macrinus. Now here's the kicker. Macrinus was almost certainly the one who orchestrated the whole thing, and in Rome, that is a very, very dangerous way to start your reign.
To really get how absolutely shocking this was for the Romans, we have to look at who Macrinus actually was. You see, he wasn't just a usurper. He was completely the wrong kind of guy to be emperor.
The ancient writers really don't pull any punches. They describe him as a jurist from Africa, he was over 50, and get this, they say he spoke Latin with a thick accent. To the Roman elite, he wasn't just an outsider, he was a walking, talking sign that the good old days were over.
So in Rome, you basically had two tiers of power. The senatorial order, that's the old money, the blue bloods. They produced the consuls, the governors, and yeah, the emperors. But Macrinus, he was from the equestrian order, kind of like the upper middle class. An equestrian could be powerful, for sure, even head of the Praetorian Guard, but the throne itself? No way. That was supposed to be completely off limits. He was the first emperor who wasn't even a senator when he took power. Think about that.
So you'd think the Senate in Rome would just lose their minds over this, right? A total break with tradition. But actually, their reaction was relief. Seriously, they hated the murdered Caracalla so much that they were basically willing to accept anyone just to be rid of him. So they confirmed Macrinus' title, but you can bet they did it through gritted teeth, just waiting to see what he'd do next.
So Macrinus has the Senate's very fragile approval, but he's got a much, much bigger problem. He's way out in the east, stuck in the middle of a massive war with the Parthian Empire that Caracalla had started.
And here's the thing. Macrinus was a lawyer, an administrator. He was a numbers guy, not a general. And now he's in command of this giant Roman army facing one of its toughest enemies. His very first test as emperor was going to be on the battlefield. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, pretty much everything. The armies clashed near a city called Nisibis, and Macrinus had a huge force, 8 legions. But the Parthians, with their legendary armored cavalry and horse archers, were just relentless. The battle raged for 3 brutal days, and in the end, the Romans were beaten. They suffered huge losses.
Unable to win the war, Macrinus did the next best thing. He got out his checkbook. He paid the Parthian king an absolutely staggering sum, 200 million sesterces, just to make the war go away. He spun it to the Senate as a great victory, saying he secured peace without losing any territory. He just kind of left out the part where he'd emptied the entire treasury to do it. So where did that money come from? This, right here, was his fatal mistake. To refill the bank account, he cut the pay for new army recruits. Now, he kept the veterans at their old salary, but the message was crystal clear to every soldier. This was just the beginning. And there's one rule for an emperor who is put on the throne by the army. You do not make the army angry.
While Macrinus was busy alienating his own power base, a much smarter, much more dangerous threat was brewing in the shadows, a threat he completely, totally underestimated. You see, he'd killed Caracalla, but he hadn't dealt with Caracalla's family. Specifically, he had ignored the powerful, ambitious women of the Severan dynasty. He was sitting in Antioch, busy with paperwork, and had no idea a coup was being plotted right under his nose.
The whole plot was run by Julia Maesa, Caracalla's aunt, and let me tell you, she was brilliant and absolutely ruthless. Her plan was genius in its simplicity. She'd use her teenage grandson, Bassianus, as a puppet. But to make him seem legitimate, she started a rumor, a really juicy rumor, that Bassianus was actually Caracalla's secret love child. And with the army already furious at Macrinus, that was a rumor they were more than ready to believe.
And that rumor spread like wildfire through the legions stationed out in Syria. Just like that, the stage was set. The usurper was about to get usurped.
His downfall was incredibly fast. I mean, breathtakingly fast. Mid-May, a legion declares for Julia Mace's grandson. A few weeks later, other legions flip. His support just completely dissolves. The end came on June 8th, near Antioch. His only loyal troops left, the Praetorian Guard, actually fought like lions for him. But Macrinus himself? When he saw the battle turning, he did the unthinkable. He shaved his beard as a disguise, hopped on a horse, and fled the field. He just abandoned his men. His Praetorians surrendered, and it was all over.
Macrinus was caught pretty quickly trying to sneak back to Rome. He and his young son were both executed. His entire reign lasted just 14 months. But his short, chaotic time in power tells us so much about where the Roman Empire was heading. After he was dead, the Senate gave him the ultimate punishment, damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. This meant his name was literally chiseled off of monuments. His statues were torn down. Rome wanted to act like the emperor who never should have been, had never been at all.
One historian called his reign an uncomfortable parenthesis. And I think that's perfect. He wasn't a chapter in Rome's story, he was a footnote, a brief, awkward interruption between two real emperors from the same dynasty.
So why does all this matter? Why talk about this footnote? Because Macrinus's rise and spectacular fall proved a dangerous new reality for Rome. Power wasn't in the Senate anymore. It wasn't with the people. The legions, the army, they were the real kingmakers now. And as Macrinus learned the hard way, they could unmake an emperor just as fast as they could make one. And that, my friends, was a terrible omen for the century of chaos that was just around the corner.
Thanks for joining this explainer. We'll see you on the roads of the empire, on the way to the decline of Rome.